Hello and welcome back to Meerkat Chris. Star Wars, the franchise that we all know, to be honest. There's no need to explain it, we all know what it is. So this is a top 8 Star Wars films, worst to best list, because we're going from the worst film to the best film. Do you get me? Let's get started. Yeah, number 8. So this is the worst one. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I don't know if this was much of a surprise to anyone because usually this is on the bottom of most people's lists. Yeah, not a great film. Not really a good film either. It's actually pretty bad technically. I know there are supporters of this film because I've even met some. Like I remember I had a friend who I asked, oh, so what's your favourite Star Wars film? And they were like, Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones. Mind you, this was back when there was only the 6 films. It's not terrible. It did help bring CGI further into the mainstream of digital filmmaking, and it was one of the first films shot on digital cameras, I believe. I mean, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you, but it's not really good enough to be a Star Wars film in my opinion. Bad writing, not great acting, even though I don't actually mind Hayden Christensen personally. I think there are some good bits of directing in there, here and there. A bit. It was cool to see the clone army being built up. I don't want to cause controversy, so we'll stop there. Number 7. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Yeah, the film that begun the prequel era of Star Wars. This one's a bit more enjoyable for me. This is a film that I can actually watch. I mean, it's a bit pointless when you think about it. It doesn't really add much to the overall saga of the films. And standing on its own, it doesn't really have much to offer as a film without having the title Star Wars to it. Of course, the film has one of the most annoying characters ever. We already all know that. I personally don't mind Qui-Gon Jinn. I quite like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. It has a little bit of a charm to me. Contrary to belief, this actually does have quite a lot of built sets and built props. A lot of people say that the prequel trilogy as a whole was just all done through CGI and green screens. This is kind of an exception, and for the most part it was shot on film as well, so there's not really that much of that hatred that you can apply to this film. That particular hatred. I'm not saying it's a great film, because it isn't. Give it like a 6 out of 10 or something. To me, it's just barely good. It's just barely good. Number 6. Now, if you haven't left the video already, I can see this being the jumping off point for most people, but let me speak about it. Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Yep, it's not one of my favourites. Oh, how do I explain this without every single person on the planet hating me? I don't know, and it's not just because it is pretty much a soft reboot of A New Hope with newer characters. There's just something about the second half of the film that just doesn't work for me. I don't know if it's because it basically follows the narrative of A New Hope pretty much point by point, and then in the third act they kind of merge the second act and the third act of A New Hope into one, and it just kind of feels rushed to me and it doesn't quite work. I don't know if that plays into it. I mean, the characters are great. This is one of the better examples of having great characters in a Star Wars film since the original trilogy, but as much as that works, I'm more excited to see what Rian Johnson does with them in episode 8, because I love the characters. Rey's brilliant, Finn's brilliant, Kylo Ren is exceptionally great as a villain, and I don't mind Poe Dameron, and BB-8 is just a whole lot of fun. So they're all really strong points, but the film they're in just isn't strong enough for me to put it higher on my list personally. I'm waiting till episode 8 and hopefully all those character traits are still in that, and then we'll have the film for them. I don't know, I just find the film a bit boring. Don't hate me, it's my opinion. It's just how I feel. I'm sorry. I really want to like this more than I do, but I give it a 7.3 out of 10 I think. So see, it's not all bad. That's like nearly very good. Nearly very good. Number 6. No, number 5. Number 5. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Yeah, this is my 5th favourite Star Wars film. It used to be my 4th. Hint, hint. It's a film in the original trilogy that doesn't hold up as well as the other two in terms of pacing, for example. I find this to definitely be the much slower film, especially for the first half, until Luke gets back to Dagobah. Jabba's palace is fun and all, but it does go on for like half an hour or something, or a bit more. And that just takes up a huge chunk of the film. As fun as it is, and as great as Jabba is as a villain, it's just, there's something. I don't know if it's the cinematography, the visuals, I mean. I just think they're a bit too grungy. I don't know what it is. There's something about that film that's just harder for me to watch than coming off Empire Strikes Back, which is a much more visually gorgeous film, and it's got great pacing. So is A New Hope. A New Hope has some of the best pacing I've ever seen in cinema. Even the second and third act are a bit slow, and the effects don't hold up as well compared to the first two films. Like, I mean, the speeder bike chase. If I was watching that today for the first time, I'd be like, ooh, no. But I don't know, I still enjoy it. I mean, I've grew up with these films, for example, like most of us. There are some really exceptionally great scenes in this film. Definitely one of the best Star Wars space battles. Lando's pretty good in this one. I love the Emperor. Definitely one of the best characters in Star Wars. And the scenes that play out with him, well done. Has one of my favourite finales of all time as well. Luke versus Vader versus the Emperor, and there's that father and son theme, and then John Williams' epic score going over the top. Just some of the best cinema moments I'll ever experience. And who doesn't love Luke's green lightsaber? Yeah, number 4. Another one that people are probably going to hate because I'm not being too conventional with this. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Like I said, I grew up with these films, and I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith at the cinema and being blown away as a kid. I've been back to it since quite a few times. I own it on Blu-ray, for example. I've been back and seen it on Blu-ray, and I think it's a great film. And when I say that, I feel like I'm in a different universe to everyone else. Okay, maybe not a great film. The first half is nowhere near as strong as the second half. It is a very cheesy, not really getting straight to the point, slowed down, and General Grievous isn't exactly the best villain in the films. I'm not saying about the Clone Wars, not talking about that, General Grievous. He's not brilliant in Revenge of the Sith, to be honest. Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, like I said about the Phantom Menace, he's brilliant. I love him in this. He's got some great dialogue, in terms of quotable dialogue, I mean. I feel like the script's a bit tighter in this one compared to the last two. That might just be me. I love seeing Chancellor Palpatine switch to the Emperor and have the whole Jedi Council like proper crumble, and then Anakin turn into the dark side and become Darth Vader, taking down all the Jedis and execute Order 66 is definitely one of the best Star Wars moments ever, and there's nothing you can say to change my mind about that. The second act is some of the most dramatic stuff in Star Wars. I don't care what people say, and Hayden Christensen to me does a good enough job to make me care. I like Revenge of the Sith, okay? Number 3. Again, this one's been getting quite a lot of controversy in the last few months. It's definitely a rising hatred for this film. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. It's a super enjoyable film in my opinion. Yes, the characters are totally bland compared to Star Wars The Force Awakens, to the point where they're mostly flat characters, but I still care for them. Is that just me? I care for them. I care for Jyn, I care for... Okay, maybe not Cassian so much. I'm not a huge fan of Cassian. I cared for Saw. I mean, as out there as Forrest Whitaker's performance was, I kind of bought it. I agree it's a bit crazy. I don't know, it just has a weird charm to me. I don't know, it's something about these Star Wars films, I guess. Not only that, but this is definitely one of the most tension-filled Star Wars films I've seen. I mean, Episode 4 has some great tension, but this builds on that tension in my opinion. It just works for me. And this is one of the very rare examples where a prequel film, not just in terms of Star Wars, but prequel films in general, where a prequel film actually builds on the original. Now when I watch Episode 4, there's a whole new layer to it that I didn't have previously. Maybe I'm just crazy. Number 2. Episode 4, A New Hope, Star Wars. The original Star Wars. Like I said previously, just in my opinion, one of the best paced films of all time. The way it grows from a slowish first act to having the stakes risen completely in the second act when they're on the Death Star, to the third act where everything's at stake, like they have to do this. It just builds up and up and up, and that's what a film should do to me. It starts off slow with just character development, perfect character development in my opinion. Whereas like The Force Awakens, for example, I feel it starts out better than it ends up. Again, I don't know. It's hard to talk about Star Wars on the internet, okay? It relies on a very basic concept as well. Good versus evil. And I don't think it's being put more clear than it has in this film. Straight from the opening shot, you know who the good guys are and you know who the bad guys are. Yeah. And now, finally, number 1. Yeah, there's no surprise. Everyone knows what it is. The Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5. This time directed by Irvin Kershner as opposed to George Lucas, who did the majority of these Star Wars films. Beautiful. One of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and not just in terms of visuals through the cinematography, which is on a 10 out of 10 level for me. I mean just the way it pulls everything down into the darkness from the first film. Like the first film, that's an action-adventure, sci-fi, fantasy film, just straight out that. That's what it is. Got a bit of tension to it, but it never really leans into becoming a dark film. This, on the other hand, takes all of what the good guy rebels did in the first one and makes them pay the consequences for everything they did in the first one. The Empire literally strike back. And what I think I love most about it is the fact that the good guys never win. Throughout the entire film, they're just barely surviving, just barely getting out of the worst situation, and then it's left on the biggest cliffhanger of all time, in my opinion. All time. Wow. I love it. It is a 10 out of 10 film for me, and it is my personal favourite film of all time. So that's the end of my top 8 list. I hope you at least kind of enjoyed it. Sorry if I've offended your opinion, because that's most likely happened in this video. But you know, this is my personal list. I'm not trying to adjust it to fit what I think you would like. Make sure to like and subscribe, I guess, because, you know, why wouldn't you? Just please don't hate me. Bye.